The night men fell from the sky. June 6, 1944. 1:12 hours.
Normandy, France.
Near the village of Saint-Mir-Église. The night is wrong. Oberleutnant Karl Wegener feels it before he understands it. Standing in a hedgerow, helmet tilted back, the smell of wet earth and cow manure thick in the air. The clouds are low, the moon hidden, and yet the darkness is alive with sound. Not artillery, not engines on the ground, engines above. A distant, rolling thunder spreads across the sky, growing louder by the second. Wegener squints upward, heart beginning to race. He has served on the Eastern Front. He has heard Soviet bombers, Stukas, Katyushas screaming like demons. This is different. This sound is steady, mechanical, relentless. Dozens, then hundreds of aircraft passing overhead, invisible behind cloud. Then the sky opens. White blossoms appear overhead, dozens at once, then hundreds more. Silk canopies snap open, drifting silently except for the hiss of air and the faint metallic clatter of equipment. Shapes hang beneath them, human shapes. Fallschirmjäger? Someone whispers. But Wegener knows immediately these are not German paratroopers. Tracer fire rips upward from nearby flak guns, stitching glowing lines into the clouds. Some parachutes burn. Others vanish into darkness. But most keep coming, descending into fields, orchards, flooded lowlands, and villages all across Normandy. American paratroopers are landing behind German lines. Wegener runs for cover as gunfire erupts from every direction. Confused, panicked, indiscriminate. Men shout orders. Horses scream. A radio operator drops his handset and fumbles to retrieve it with shaking hands. Somewhere nearby, a transport plane roars low and slow, its engines coughing as it absorbs small arms fire. Then something worse happens. Gunfire answers back from the ground. Short bursts, controlled, close. An American M1 carbine cracks in the dark. A Thompson submachine gun rattles off a burst, sharp and fast. A German sentry collapses with a wet sound, his rifle clattering into mud. Shapes move through the hedgerows, low, fast, deliberate. These men are not waiting to assemble. They are fighting immediately. Later, hours later, Oberleutnant Wegener will write in his diary with numb fingers, candle flickering beside him. Enemy paratroopers appeared everywhere at once. No front line. Norir. Confusion total. One never knew if the hedge ahead was empty or already occupied. Across Normandy, dozens of German officers are writing similar words. Some write in anger, some in disbelief, some unmistakably in fear. Near Carentan, Hauptmann Ernst Kohler crouches in a commandeered farmhouse, listening to the sounds outside. Sporadic gunfire, shouting in English, the heavy thump of grenades detonating far too close for comfort. His unit, an Ost battalion, has already scattered. The Americans landed among them like wolves dropped into a flock. Kohler grips his pistol and thinks of something deeply unsettling. These Americans are not acting like green troops. They are aggressive, independent, unpredictable. One report reaches him by runner, breathless, terrified. Enemy paratroopers attacked the command post directly, her Hauptmann, threw grenades through windows, killed the signalers first. Signalers first. That detail lodges itself in Kohler's mind like a splinter. These men understand how an army works. They know what to destroy, who to kill, what to seize. Bridges, road junctions, radios, officers. This is not chaos. It only looks like chaos. In the village of Saint-Mir-Église, fires burn where buildings have been hit by aircraft and anti-aircraft rounds. Paratroopers hang dead from trees and church rooftops, parachutes glowing eerily in the flames. But for every body hanging motionless, another American is already on the move, cutting himself free, grabbing his weapon, disappearing into shadow. German Lieutenant Franz Albrecht watches one such figure sprint across a field, silhouetted briefly by firelight. The American runs toward gunfire, not away from it. Albrecht will later write, "They advanced even when isolated, even when surrounded. One could not frighten them with noise or fire. The fear is not just of being attacked. It is the fear of being hunted. German doctrine depends on order, defined lines, clear chains of command, predictable movement. But this night has none of that. The battlefield is suddenly three-dimensional. The enemy is behind you, beside you, ahead of you, sometimes all at once. A Feldwebel is found dead near a crossroads, throat cut. Another is shot while trying to mount a motorcycle. A patrol disappears entirely, last heard shouting into the dark before the radio goes silent. And overhead, more engines pass. More parachutes open. More Americans fall from the sky. By dawn, German officers across Normandy will sit in shell holes, barns, and shattered command posts, writing hurried notes in diaries and reports, trying to impose order on something that feels fundamentally wrong. The Americans were not supposed to fight like this. They were not supposed to land scattered and win. They were not supposed to inspire fear before the main invasion had even reached the beaches. But as the night wears on, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. This enemy does not need a front line. They are the front line. They fought without waiting for orders. June 6, 1944, 6:40 hours. Normandy countryside, west of Utah Beach. Dawn comes slowly, reluctantly, as if the sky itself is unsure whether it wants to reveal what happened during the night. Mist clings to the hedgerows. Smoke drifts low across flooded fields where parachutes lie tangled in fences and trees. The ground is littered with dropped equipment. Ammo containers, medical kits, radios smashed on impact. To a German officer's eye, it looks like disaster. A failed airborne landing. Scattered troops. Broken cohesion. Oberstleutnant Friedrich von Hardenberg thinks this as he adjusts his field glasses from the saddle of his staff car. Then the shooting starts again. Not the wild, panicked firing of the night before. This is measured, purposeful, short bursts from concealed positions. A German patrol steps onto a narrow farm road and is immediately hit from both sides. Grenades rolling under boots, rifle fire cracking from behind hedges no more than 20 meters away. 3 men go down before anyone can shout a warning. The Americans vanish before return fire can even begin. Hardenberg slams his fist against the car door. "These are supposed to be paratroopers," he mutters. "Where are their units? Their formations?" His adjutant does not answer. He is staring at a map now riddled with red grease pencil marks. Bridges destroyed, roadblocks reported, wire cut, phone lines dead. Each incident is small, none decisive on its own. Together they are suffocating. Reports filter in throughout the morning, carried by runners because radios no longer work. Again and again, the same phrases appear in hurried handwriting. Enemy paratroopers acting independently. Small groups attacking aggressively. No hesitation, even when outnumbered. A lieutenant from the 91st Air Landing Division describes an engagement near a stone bridge. His platoon advanced cautiously, expecting scattered survivors. Instead, they walked into a perfectly placed ambush, machine gun fire pinning them while riflemen maneuvered along a drainage ditch to flank. The officer underlines one sentence twice in his report. They maneuvered as if led by officers, but no officers were seen. That is what unsettles the Germans most. American paratroopers are supposed to be elite, but elite units still rely on hierarchy. Orders, whistles, radios. Yet these men fight as if command exists everywhere at once. When one falls, another steps in. When plans break, new ones appear instantly. Near Saint-Cum-du-Mont, Hauptmann Ernst Kohler, the same officer who survived the night in the farmhouse, watches his company hesitate at a crossroads. His men are exhausted, shaken. Every hedgerow feels like a trap. "Advance," he orders. They take 5 steps before an American voice shouts from somewhere unseen, accented but calm. "Grenade!" The explosion lifts 2 men off their feet. Smoke fills the road. Before it clears, Americans rush forward. Not screaming, not charging wildly, but firing as they move, bounding from cover to cover with terrifying confidence. Kohler survives only because a wall collapses under him, dragging him into a shallow ditch. When he claws his way back up, the Americans are gone. 3 of his men are dead. 1 is wounded, staring blankly at nothing. Later that day, Kohler will write, "They did not hold ground as we expected. They struck, withdrew, and struck again elsewhere. It felt as if the countryside itself was hostile." In another sector, a German major interrogates a captured American paratrooper, Private First Class 101st Airborne. Mud-streaked, bloody, calm. "Where is your unit?" the major demands. The American shrugs. "Don't know, sir. Haven't seen him since I landed." The major leans closer. "Then why are you still fighting?" The paratrooper looks genuinely confused by the question. "Because that's where the shooting is." This answer is written down later, almost word for word, in a German intelligence summary. It circulates quietly among officers who don't laugh when they read it. They feel it instead, that creeping realization that they are facing a new kind of enemy soldier. These Americans are not reacting to orders. They are reacting to opportunity. German doctrine has always prized discipline and centralized control. Even their own Fallschirmjäger, hardened veterans of Crete and the Eastern Front, operate within clear structures. But American airborne troops have been trained differently, drilled to act when cut off, to improvise, to assume leadership without rank. The result is deeply unsettling. By midday, German commanders begin to realize something else. The Americans are shaping the battlefield without holding it. They destroy bridges not to occupy them, but to delay. They seize crossroads not to defend them, but to confuse traffic and misdirect reinforcements. They fire, move, disappear, leaving behind uncertainty instead of a clear enemy position. One divisional staff officer writes in frustration, "Every report contradicts the last. Enemy strength impossible to determine. That uncertainty spreads like infection."
Men 4 at Shadows.
Units delay advances waiting for support that never arrives. Orders are questioned. Time slips away, time the Germans cannot afford. And offshore, beyond the fields and hedgerows, a low rumble begins to roll inland. Naval guns. The beaches are active now. The main invasion has begun. German officers glance east, then back toward the countryside behind them, where American paratroopers continue to move, strike, and vanish. The fear in their diaries deepens, not because the Americans are everywhere, but because they could be anywhere. A different kind of soldier. June 7, 1944, 2:30 hours. German Divisional Command Post, near Corentin. A single candle burns on a wooden table scarred by knife marks and spilled coffee. Maps are pinned to the walls, their edges curling in the damp night air. The room smells of sweat, smoke, and anxiety. General Major Wilhelm Foley's successor. His replacement arrived only hours after Foley was killed by American paratroopers on the road. Stands hunched over a field desk, reading captured documents and after-action reports. Outside, artillery thuds intermittently. Inside, silence presses down, heavy and oppressive. He stops reading and rubs his eyes. Again and again, the same observations appear in German handwriting. Diaries, unit logs, private letters never meant for publication. Unusual boldness. Fanatical resistance. Enemy soldiers fought even when isolated. This language is not unfamiliar. German officers used similar words to describe Soviet troops in 1941 or British commandos in North Africa. But here, the tone is different. Less contempt. More unease. These Americans are not reckless. They are deliberate. A regimental commander recounts an encounter at a narrow causeway. His men advanced cautiously, clearing hedgerows one by one. They found nothing, no enemy, no equipment. Then the rear guard was hit. Americans had allowed the lead elements to pass, then attacked the command group from behind, killing the radio operator and mortar crew before melting away. The officer underlines his final sentence 3 times. They understood our formations better than expected. Nearby, a staff captain flips through a captured American field manual. The pages are damp, edges torn. He expects slogans, simplistic doctrine. Instead, he finds emphasis on initiative, decision-making under isolation, and what the Americans call aggressive action in the absence of orders. The captain swallows. This is not accidental behavior. It is trained. Out in the countryside, that training is being put to relentless use. Sergeant William Bill Harper of the 82nd Airborne has not slept in nearly 48 hours. His helmet is dented. His jump jacket is torn. Half the men he landed with are missing, dead, captured, or scattered. He has 12 paratroopers with him now, drawn together by gunfire and instinct rather than plan. They set an ambush near a sunken road used by German supply trucks. Harper positions 2 men with a captured MG-42, turns it against its former owners. He times the approach by listening, boots on gravel, murmured German voices, the rattle of equipment. When the first truck enters the kill zone, Harper raises his fist, then drops it. The ambush lasts less than 30 seconds. By the time German reinforcements arrive, the Americans are gone, leaving wrecked vehicles, scattered supplies, and the unsettling realization that their own weapons were used against them with lethal efficiency. A German lieutenant kneels beside one of the bodies and stares at the bullet wounds. Clean, precise, close. He writes that night, "They do not waste ammunition. They fire to kill, then move on." By June 7th, the cumulative effect is taking shape in German minds. These Americans are not just soldiers. They are hunters. They do not seek decisive battles. They seek disruption, confusion, psychological dominance. They strike command posts, logistics, communications, targets that undermine confidence as much as capability. One diary entry from an artillery officer stands out. "We could fight tanks. We could fight infantry. But how does one fight an enemy who refuses to be located?" The answer, increasingly, is with fear. Fear of every hedgerow, every farmhouse, every stand of trees. Fear that any pause in movement might invite an ambush. Fear that the enemy is watching, waiting, choosing the moment. Even hardened veterans begin to show it. A Feldwebel snaps at his men for bunching up. Another fires prematurely at a bird bursting from cover. Sleep becomes impossible. Nerves fray. And the American paratroopers, exhausted, hungry, often low on ammunition, somehow keep going. Not because they are fearless, but because they have been taught that hesitation is more dangerous than action. German officers note this again and again. The Americans advance into uncertainty rather than away from it. When cut off, they do not withdraw, they adapt. When surrounded, they attack in a direction least expected. One intelligence officer writes a line that circulates quietly, passed from hand to hand. Their courage seems based not on ideology, but on confidence. Confidence in their training, in each other, in the belief that initiative will save them when orders cannot. By the night of June 7th, the diaries change tone. Less shock, more dread, because now the German officers understand something critical. This behavior was not unique to Normandy. If these airborne troops exist here, then more like them will come, and the war they represent will not be fought on predictable terms. Fear written in ink. June 10th, 1944. 23:40 hours. A ruined manor house, Normandy. Rain taps softly against shattered windows. The manor smells of mold, damp paper, and extinguished candles. In a corner room, shielded by sandbags and broken furniture, Oberst Hans Becker sits hunched over a small notebook, pencil moving slowly despite the cold. He is careful with his words. This diary is not an official document. It is private, honest in a way reports are not meant to be. Becker has commanded infantry for over 20 years. Poland, France, Russia. He has written calmly about encirclement, retreat, and loss before. But tonight his hand trembles. "The American airborne soldier is unlike our expectations," he writes. "He shows initiative beyond rank. Even privates act as leaders." Becker pauses, listening to the distant rumble of guns. Somewhere beyond the hedgerows, Americans are still moving, still probing, still cutting. He adds another line, then scratches it out, then writes it again. This makes them dangerous. Across Normandy, similar notebooks are being filled. In one diary recovered after the war, a German captain describes an encounter with a single American paratrooper hiding in a hayloft. The man waited silently for hours as a German squad searched the barn. When they relaxed, thinking it empty, he dropped a grenade and escaped through a rear door, wounding 3 and killing 1. The captain writes, "He could have fled earlier. He chose instead to attack." That choice, that aggressive refusal to simply survive, is what lodges in German minds. Another officer, serving with a Panzergrenadier unit, notes something more unsettling. Their confidence seems infectious. Our men hesitate. The Americans do not. The Germans are still professional, still disciplined, still capable of inflicting heavy casualties. But fear is not about defeat, it is about uncertainty. And uncertainty now saturates every decision. Orders are delayed. Counterattacks are postponed until the situation becomes clearer. Patrols double in size, then move slower. Initiative, once prized, is quietly discouraged. American paratroopers exploit this without even knowing it. Near La Fere Causeway, small groups continue to harass German movements day and night. They fire from one position, then relocate before artillery can respond. They leave behind booby traps, cut wire, destroy road signs. Each action is minor. Together, they create paralysis. A German staff officer writes in frustration, "Enemy strength cannot be assessed. Resistance encountered even where no units should exist." The phrase, "even where no units should exist," appears repeatedly in German accounts. That is the psychological wound. German officers are trained to read the battlefield, to interpret movement, supply, formation. But American airborne operations erase those markers. The enemy appears without warning, fights without waiting, and disappears without explanation. In one entry dated June 11th, a lieutenant confesses something rarely admitted by professionals. "I find myself imagining Americans where none are present." Fear has crossed from rational assessment into instinct. Even when captured Americans are questioned, the effect does not lessen. A battalion commander interrogates a paratrooper who has been fighting for days with no contact from higher command. The German expects bitterness, frustration, perhaps resentment. Instead, the American grins faintly and says, "We figured you'd show up eventually." The commander writes afterward, "He spoke as if success was inevitable." That assumption, that quiet belief in victory, unnerves men fighting for ground they already sense may be lost. By mid-June, German diaries begin to shift again. The fear becomes more focused, more analytical. Officers begin to write not just that the Americans are dangerous, but why. They identify the cause as training, culture, and doctrine. The Americans encourage decision-making at the lowest level. They reward initiative. They prepare soldiers to fight cut off, surrounded, and alone. One officer summarizes it bleakly, "We are trained to obey. They are trained to act." This is not a condemnation. It is an admission, and it explains why fear appears so often in the margins of German writing. Not panic, not hysteria, but a professional recognition that the battlefield has changed. The American paratrooper is not frightening because he is superhuman. He is frightening because he does not behave as expected, because he turns isolation into freedom, because he treats disorder as opportunity. By the time Becker closes his notebook that night, he understands something he never expected to write. If this war continues, such soldiers will decide it. He does not know how right he is. What the diaries ultimately revealed. June 18, 1944. Early morning. German Rear Area Headquarters. Normandy. The guns have moved west. Not stopped, never stopped, but shifted, rolling farther away as Allied forces expand their foothold. In a half-collapsed schoolhouse pressed into service as a command post, Major Otto Reimers sits alone at a desk, rereading the pages of his diary from the last 2 weeks. Mud-stained, water-warped, written in pencil because ink ran out days ago. He pauses on a sentence he barely remembers writing. "I dread the hedgerows more than the artillery." Reimers closes the notebook slowly. This fear did not arrive suddenly. It accumulated quietly, methodically, through dozens of encounters too small to appear in official histories. It came from ambushes that made no sense. From prisoners who were calm when they should have been broken. From soldiers who attacked without waiting, withdrew without fear, and returned when least expected. The diaries tell a story that reports could not. Official German records still speak in measured terms: enemy airborne forces, disruption, delays. But personal writing, the private space where officers were honest, reveals the deeper truth. American paratroopers did not just damage German units. They damaged German confidence. Again and again, officers' right of hesitation creeping in, of commanders second-guessing themselves, of experienced NCOs moving more slowly, choosing safety over speed. None of this appears dramatic. None of it looks like defeat. But wars are not only decided by firepower. They are decided by tempo. And in Normandy, the Americans controlled it. Reimers flips to another page, dated June 7th. We believed initiative belonged to officers. The Americans have given it to everyone. That realization sits at the heart of the fear. The German army prides itself on discipline and obedience, qualities that served it well in earlier campaigns. But against American paratroopers, those same strengths become limitations. When leaders are killed, momentum falters. When communications break, action slows. The Americans expect those breaks. They plan for them. Their doctrine does not collapse without orders, it thrives. German diaries note that even when airborne troops were exhausted, wounded, or undersupplied, their behavior did not change. They continued to seek contact, to press, to exploit hesitation. One final entry from a regimental commander, dated June 20th, captures the essence. They do not wait for the situation to improve. They force it to improve. That sentence could never appear in a formal report, but it explains why fear threads through so many private pages. Fear not of numbers. Fear not of technology. Fear of an enemy who removed predictability from the battlefield. After the war, historians will read these diaries and letters and wonder why seasoned German officers, men who fought in some of the harshest campaigns imaginable, felt such unease toward American paratroopers. The answer is written plainly, if you know where to look. Because these soldiers did not fight like the old armies of Europe. They fought like the wars of the future. And in Normandy, German officers recognized it first. Not in defeat, but in the quiet, honest lines they wrote by candlelight, admitting what official doctrine could not. The American paratrooper had changed the rules. And fear was the first sign that the change was irreversible. ND.